How's it going, folks? Stu here. This weekend that just went, over here in London, we had another film festival, but like an actual film festival. Can't remember the last time I was in person. It must have been what? London Film Festival 2019? And that festival was this year's Sundance Film Festival London. You won't see it because I'm not including it in the video, but I've just tried that line over and over and over. I'm just glad to get past it. I was fortunate enough to get out and see some of the films which have been on my watch list for a long time. And the first of those films for me was Coda, which had been getting a lot of buzz from, well, I mean, the actual Sundance Festival in the States, which happens in January every year. So I was pretty excited, didn't really know much going into it. And I've got to say, I was pleasantly surprised with Coda. Obviously, people have been telling me it would be good, so, you know, I can't act too surprised that I ended up enjoying it there. But I've got to be honest, at the beginning of this film, when it's sort of laying its chess pieces out in front of you, it seemed like there were a lot of things in this film which typically I might not have warmed towards. And so I was sort of cautiously enjoying it to begin with until I finally just sort of let it take me where it needed to take me and ended up really getting sucked into it and having a really lovely time with it. It's essentially the story of a young girl called Ruby who is battling these two parts of her life. On the one hand, she's quite lonely at school. She has this insane talent with her voice in singing and she wants to pursue that, but she doesn't quite know how to go about doing that. And on the other side of things, perhaps more important to the story, I mean, it's what the film's named after, she is a Coda, which if you don't know is the abbreviation for Child of Deaf Adults. The rest of her family are all deaf, and so she's dealing with being the only one that isn't deaf and how the world views them as a family and how that family works. And I've got to say that makes for a very kind of interesting and refreshing take on this, I guess, quite conventional coming-of-age tale of, you know, a student that is obviously very good at singing, not quite knowing they're very good at singing, and then going on to do like a performance and sing well for everyone. That is the part of the story which is exactly what I mean when I say the sort of red flags were almost there at the beginning, because I really just didn't want this to become that kind of a film where we've got, I don't know, generic kids singing pop songs in an a cappella style. I don't want to have to do this. Fuck it, I'm gonna do it anyway though. I was worried about it becoming like a Pitch Perfect thing, which is obviously an incredibly lazy comparison to make. So, oh, they sing, but truly at the beginning of this film I was very worried that it was gonna go down that very kind of generic, glossy singing style route, which I just don't tend to vibe with. But that's where one of the film's biggest sort of surprises for me ended up coming out, and that is that the way it deals with Ruby's voice, the way she sings, and that whole approach to the story there, it was just very genuine. Like it didn't feel like we were watching people miming to songs. It didn't feel like she had this, I don't know how to put it, like an overly kind of pristine voice, if that makes much sense. She just has a great voice. She has a wonderful voice. Just nice that she had a genuinely great voice. The tone is, I want to hear her sing all songs ever. And then you've also got the performance from Emilia Jones as Ruby in the central role, who is also just a kind of breath of fresh air. It's her singing voice, but it's also just her as an actress that manages to very quickly get you on board with some of the things which I think can run the risk of feeling quite conventional under lesser directors and lesser performers. And I think that immediately sets it on the front foot here, because it means that you have a character that you want to see succeed and you want to see do well, but you understand why they're maybe holding themselves back. But the family around her are also all just brilliant. And the choice to get actual deaf actors involved here just works wonders here, and you couldn't really do it any other way. So I'm very happy to see that they did go down the route that they did. They're all brilliant and they all work so wonderfully as a family. Again, it feels like you're watching a very authentic and a very genuine relationship between them all. And a lot of the film's spent with these characters talking in ASL, American Sign Language, which is, I just thought was an incredibly refreshing way into these characters and into this family. And it helps to make this film work much stronger as a look into this kind of deaf community and the way that these deaf characters interact with each other. I found that, you know, obviously as not being a deaf person and someone that doesn't know sign language, I found it to be an incredibly kind of interesting and rewarding watch in that sense. And I can't imagine how much better that feels to be someone from that community watching this and seeing that represented. And that's all sort of wrapped up in Sian Hedda's great direction here. It's very clear that she set out wanting to do something important in terms of representation, and it's very clear that she was always considering that every step along the way, and it shows in the final product. And I think it's that specifically which makes a lot of the things which might otherwise have felt quite cliche, kind of saccharine feel much more authentic and real here. It does a good job of sort of avoiding certain kind of eye-rolling conventions that you might find in a film like this usually. That being said, there are some elements of it and some moments which I think, it's not that they're just cheesy moments in a film. I think that can be quite an easy and lazy thing to say about certain films, but it's just that with everything else that's going on in a film, certain moments can feel like they've taken the easy route out when I would have liked to have seen it mined a little bit further there. There's a specific montage that sort of happens in the middle half of the film as we're moving from Act 2 to 3, which kind of sucked me out a little bit because it did feel like the more conventional and easy route through this story that I was a bit worried this film would fall into at the very beginning. I also found that in certain relationships, there's a relationship between Ruby and a central character in the film which works, but also feels like it's missing a few steps. I almost feel like I could have done with a few more scenes to really sell that relationship, and the fact that those aren't in there mean that some scenes I was just kind of like, why? And the answer is obviously because that's the narrative and the drama, and that's where this character needs to get to, but it was a little bit annoying. There's some kind of random sort of scenes of kids jumping off cliffs into big lakes that was very obvious, I thought. But for all of those scenes in the film, there were thankfully a lot more scenes that really surprised me in the way Sian Heder approached them as a director and the choices she made. And I think that really does help this film fall into its sort of authenticity, its genuine heart. And that's lovely and very heartwarming and makes it very effective and means that me cry a lot. I cried a lot in this film. I'm not gonna lie, spent basically the last 20 minutes just sort of at different stages of tears, but they were never not there. I was not warned about any third act Joni Mitchell songs, so I don't know who we need to talk to about that. Is there some kind of committee I can go to? You can't just drop a Joni Mitchell song in the climactic third act of a film and expect me not to just fucking hail out of my eyes. So that was fun. So yeah, I actually ended up having a really lovely time with Coda, even if it sort of falls into some of the kind of conventional traps of stories like this. It's an absolute crowd pleaser, and I don't mean that in a negative way at all. I think it drops on Apple TV Plus over here, well, everywhere in August, but I also think it's getting a UK release in cinemas. I hope it is, and if it is, definitely go out and see it. I think you're going to really enjoy it. But what about you guys? Have you had a chance to check out Coda yet? Did you see it at Sundance this weekend? Did you see it at Sundance in the States back in January? All that fucking what feels like a decade ago. Let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. We'll have a little chat. But until next time, stay beautiful, stay safe. I'm going to go and listen to Joni Mitchell and probably cry for a bit.